I stood outside the grand ballroom of the Sterling Hotel, my fingers tightening around my phone. Inside, my boss, Mr. Ethan Carmichael, was celebrating his biggest career achievement yet. His promotion to vice president of Crestwell and Company. The room was filled with powerful executives, investors, and board members. His wife, Claire, stood by his side, beaming with pride. She had no idea. My heart pounded, but I took a deep breath. It was time. With a smirk, I sent the email. Within seconds, the notification pinged on Ethan's phone. I saw his face change as he read the message. His smug smile disappeared. His body stiffened. Claire glanced at him, confused. Then another phone buzzed. And another. Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. One of the senior partners, Mr. Greaves, cleared his throat and turned to Ethan. "Can we speak outside?" Claire's face paled. "Ethan, what's going on?" I took a step forward, enjoying every second of the chaos I had created. After months of humiliation, after all the times Ethan had made me feel worthless, it was his turn to squirm. Because I had just sent proof of his affair. To his wife, to the CEO, and to the entire board of directors. Crestwell and Company was my second home. I had spent 3 years proving myself, climbing the ranks through hard work and dedication. My name was on some of the firm's biggest deals. Clients respected me. Colleagues valued my input. I was on track for a well-earned promotion. Then Ethan Carmichael arrived. From the moment he stepped into the office, he acted like he owned the place. Tall, sharp-jawed, and impeccably dressed, he had the air of a man who thought he was untouchable. His smile was charming, his confidence magnetic. The executives loved him. The junior employees admired him. I saw through him immediately. Ethan wasn't here to be a team player. He was here to dominate. And I was his first target. At first, it was minor things, little power plays meant to put me in my place. In meetings, he'd cut me off mid-sentence, dismissing my ideas before I could fully explain them. "I hear what you're saying, Maya, but let's go in a different direction." When I sent out reports, he would revise them by changing a single word, just enough to make it seem like my work needed correction. Emails that used to come to me were suddenly redirected to him. He insisted that I CC him on everything, but he never extended the same courtesy. Then the real humiliation began. One afternoon, I was scheduled to meet with a major client, Harper Industries. I had built the relationship from the ground up and they trusted me. Ethan knew that. An hour before the meeting, he called me into his office. "Change of plans," he said casually, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'll be handling the Harper account from now on." I stared at him. "Excuse me? I've been working with them for over a year." He leaned back, smirking. "I know. That's why I need you to step aside. I'll take it from here." "But His expression hardened. "It's a business decision, Maya. Don't take it personally." I had no choice but to nod and walk away. But inside I was fuming. He took the meeting, took the credit, and took the client. It was only the beginning. A few weeks later it happened, the moment that pushed me over the edge. We had a major presentation scheduled for a high-profile client, one that could bring in millions in revenue. I had spent weeks preparing, fine-tuning every slide, rehearsing every answer. The entire department was gathered in the conference room, along with senior partners. It was my moment to shine. I stood up, adjusting my blazer. I was nervous but ready. Then Ethan spoke. "Actually, Maya, I think I'll handle this one." I blinked. "What?" He leaned against the podium, smiling like this was all so casual. "You did a great job with the prep, but I'll take it from here." Laughter rippled through the room. People exchanged amused glances. I felt my face heat up. "But He waved a hand. "Relax. You're great at taking notes." More laughter. My stomach clenched. I wanted to fight back, to tell him off in front of everyone. But I knew how it would look. A woman getting emotional, arguing with her boss in a room full of executives? It wouldn't end well. So I clenched my fists and sat down. Ethan delivered my presentation like it was his own. He used my research, my slides, my strategies. And when the client nodded in approval, he smiled like he had done all the work. At the end of the meeting, the partners shook his hand. "Brilliant work, Ethan," one of them said. Ethan cast me a smug glance. "Couldn't have done it without my team." The final nail in the coffin? After the meeting, he sent me an email with the subject line, "Great teamwork today." The body of the email was just one line. Could you tidy up the notes and send them to me? I stared at the screen, my nails digging into my palm. That was the moment I decided. I would make him pay. Humiliation is a strange thing. It can break you or it can mold you into something sharper, stronger. That night, after Ethan's public takedown of my hard work, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop. The email he had sent still glowed on the screen. Could you tidy up the notes and send them to me? The words burned in my chest. I could let this go. I could stay in my lane, keep my head down, and pray that someday someone would recognize my efforts. Or I could destroy him. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine, my mind racing. Ethan had built himself an image of the perfect leader. Confident, professional, untouchable. But men like him always had weaknesses. I just had to find them. I started small. I paid attention to everything, his habits, his schedule, his conversations. I noticed the way he took his coffee, black, 2 sugars, the way he loosened his tie after lunch, and the way he checked his phone constantly when he thought no one was watching. He was careful but not careful enough. I learned that every Wednesday evening he worked late. Except he never actually did. Instead, he left the office around 7 p.m. and took a different elevator to the parking garage. From there, he drove somewhere that wasn't his home. I didn't follow him. Not yet. I needed more. So I started getting closer. It wasn't easy pretending to respect someone you despised. But I had to. I started responding to his power plays with a smile instead of anger. When he dismissed my ideas in meetings, I nodded and said, "That's a great point, Ethan." When he stole credit for my work, I let him. For now. And when he made me run around doing pointless tasks, I did them perfectly, so well that it irritated him. Slowly he started letting his guard down around me. I became invisible to him. Just another employee too weak to fight back. That's exactly what I wanted him to think. 2 weeks into my plan, I caught my first real break. It was late. Most of the office had already cleared out. I had stayed behind, pretending to work on a report. Ethan was in his office, door slightly ajar, speaking on the phone. His voice was low, careful. But I caught enough. "No, Claire doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm in a meeting." Claire. His wife. "Come on, baby, you know I can't just leave right now. Next week, I promise." I felt a slow smile spread across my face. So Mr. Perfect wasn't so perfect after all. I opened my laptop and started a new folder. Catching Ethan in one moment of infidelity wasn't enough. I needed solid, undeniable proof. Something that would ruin him both personally and professionally. So I started digging. First, I went through his calendar. He had private meetings scheduled at odd times, always marked with vague descriptions like client discussion or strategy review. Then I watched his behavior with the women in the office. He was charming with everyone, but with Sophia, our firm's legal consultant, he was different. The stolen glances. The way he lingered by her desk. The way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. I had a hunch. And I was right. One evening as I was working late again, I saw them. Sophia slipped into Ethan's office. The blinds weren't fully closed, and from where I stood, I had a clear line of sight. She leaned against his desk, her fingers brushing his tie. He smirked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Then he kissed her. I didn't need to see more. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Now that I had visual proof, I needed to tie everything together. Over the next few weeks, I followed their pattern. Ethan and Sophia were reckless. They texted frequently, met at hotels, and even exchanged flirty emails. I started collecting everything. 1. Screenshots of their texts. I intercepted some of their messages when Ethan left his computer unattended. 2. Hotel receipts. He checked in under a fake name, but I tracked his transactions. 3. A voice recording. I placed my phone near his office door one evening and caught him telling Sophia, "Claire suspects nothing. She's too naive." By the time I was done, I had a full case against him. Now I just had to wait. The moment everything fell into place came unexpectedly. One afternoon, I was in the break room when Claire, Ethan's wife, walked in. She was visiting the office, dropping off something for him. She was beautiful, elegant, and kind. She smiled at me as she set a neatly wrapped lunchbox on the counter. "I swear Ethan forgets to eat when he's busy," she laughed. "I always have to remind him." I forced a smile. She had no idea that while she was packing his lunch, he was out having dinner with someone else. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't just going to destroy Ethan's career. I was going to destroy his entire life. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about patience. I knew that if I wanted to take Ethan down, I had to do it carefully. A single accusation wouldn't be enough. Men like him were too good at slipping out of trouble. I needed evidence so overwhelming that neither his wife nor our company could ignore it. So I became a ghost in his world. Watching. Listening. Collecting. I wasn't just looking for proof of his affair. I was looking for ways to ruin everything he had built. And I was willing to wait as long as it took. Ethan thought he was smart. He used his personal phone for his affair with Sophia, never his work phone. He never sent emails directly, always through private messaging apps. But even the smartest cheaters make mistakes. And Ethan had a fatal flaw. He was arrogant. I started small, taking note of every time he checked his phone, every time he left his computer unlocked at his desk. Then one night I got my chance. It was late and the office was nearly empty. Ethan had left his desk to take a call in the hallway. His laptop was open. I walked over, heart pounding, and tapped the keyboard. The screen lit up. No password prompt. Idiot. I clicked open his messages. He had logged into WhatsApp web, probably thinking no one would ever touch his laptop. The conversation at the top? Sophia, you looked so good today. I can't wait to see you later. I quickly took screenshots and forwarded them to my email. But I didn't stop there. I opened his calendar and cross-checked his meetings. Fake business trips. Late-night strategy sessions. All cover-ups. I sent everything to myself. Then I closed the laptop, walked away, and waited for him to return. He never suspected a thing. One of the first things I learned about Ethan was that he was careful with digital evidence but sloppy with physical ones. So I started tracking his movements. I memorized his favorite spots. The hotel he used for his meetings with Sophia. The high-end bar where they had late-night drinks. The private gym they both suddenly joined. I even befriended the receptionist at the hotel, playing the role of a casual office worker making small talk. I swear my boss practically lives here, I joked one day, nodding toward Ethan's usual check-in list. She rolled her eyes. Tell me about it. Always the same fake name, but we all know it's him. I tilted my head. Fake name? She laughed. Yeah. Daniel Hayes. As if that's fooling anyone. Bingo. That night I booked a room at the same hotel. Not for a stay, just to get access to the front desk records. I casually walked past, glanced at the screen, and there it was. Daniel Hayes, room 1208. Checked in at 6:45 p.m. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. Then I left. Text messages could be denied. Receipts could be explained away. But video evidence? That was irrefutable. So I needed footage. The opportunity came on a Friday night. Ethan had sent Sophia a message. Ethan. Same place, 8 p.m. Can't wait to see you. I already knew where same place was. The hotel. I arrived at 7:30 p.m. and found a spot in the lounge area, where I had a clear view of the elevator. At exactly 7:58 p.m. Ethan walked in. He wasn't in his usual work suit. He had changed into a crisp, casual button-down and slacks, his date night look. Sophia arrived minutes later, scanning the lobby nervously before following him to the elevator. I clicked record on my phone. They stepped in together, the doors closing behind them. I smiled. Perfect. Now that I had texts, receipts, and video proof, I needed one last thing. Something that would devastate him beyond repair. His confession. This part required a little acting. I started being extra friendly toward Ethan, subtly dropping hints that I was over our past conflicts. Honestly, I admire how you handle stress, I told him one day, pretending to be impressed. You're always so confident no matter what's happening. He smirked. It's all about balance, Maya. Work hard, play hard. I pretended to hesitate. I don't know how you do it. If I had a wife and a job this demanding, I'd probably crack under pressure. Ethan chuckled, sipping his coffee. You just have to know how to manage things. That was my moment. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check my messages. Like, when do you even find time to breathe? You're always in meetings, working late. I gave him a knowing look. And yet somehow you have time for other things. Ethan leaned in, grinning. Let's just say I have my ways. I pressed the record button on my phone. Your wife must be very understanding, I said lightly. He exhaled, shaking his head. Claire has no clue. She's too busy with charity events and yoga retreats. If she knew half the things I did, he smirked. Let's just say it's good to keep certain things quiet. I stopped recording. I finally had everything I needed. Now it was time to deliver the final blow. Ethan had spent months undermining me, humiliating me, stealing my work. He thought he was untouchable. But he had no idea that his world was about to come crashing down. Revenge isn't just about how you strike. It's about when. I had spent months gathering evidence. Texts, receipts, videos, and even a voice recording of Ethan practically confessing to his affair. But I couldn't just dump everything at random. No, I needed impact. I needed to ensure that when Ethan fell, he fell so hard there was no getting up. And that's when the perfect moment presented itself. His promotion. The company had been in talks about restructuring, and word around the office was that Ethan was being considered for a major executive role. A big announcement was coming soon. If everything went as expected, he would be introduced as the new vice president of operations at an official company event. A grand ceremony, complete with media coverage, senior executives, and of course his wife standing proudly by his side. That would be the moment. In front of everyone. All I had to do was make sure everything was in place before the big day. I started with Claire. Up until now, she had no idea what her husband was doing behind her back. She was the perfect, devoted wife. The type to ignore red flags because she believed in him. That was about to change. One evening, about a week before the event, I sent an anonymous email to her personal inbox. Subject: Your husband is not who you think he is. I attached a few key pieces of evidence. Screenshots of Ethan's messages with Sophia. A photo of them entering the hotel together. A voice recording of Ethan laughing about how Claire had no clue. I kept the message simple. You deserve the truth. Check the attached files. You'll see for yourself. Then I hit send. Now I waited. The next morning I arrived at work earlier than usual, just in time to witness the aftermath. Ethan walked in looking off. His usual arrogance had been replaced by tension. His tie was slightly crooked and there were faint red marks on his neck, like someone had grabbed him. Claire had found out. And based on his disheveled appearance, their confrontation hadn't gone well. I smiled to myself. But I wasn't done yet. Now it was time for step 2, taking this to the company. Ethan's upcoming promotion meant that the company had placed a great deal of trust in him. He was about to represent them at an executive level, and their reputation depended on his integrity. What they didn't know was that their soon-to-be vice president had been misusing company time, resources, and relationships for his personal escapades. That was about to become very public. 3 days before the big event, I walked into HR with a flash drive in hand. "Hey Maya," said Sandra, the head of HR. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, feigning concern. I wasn't sure if I should bring this up, but I have some disturbing information about Ethan that could be a serious problem for the company. Her expression shifted. "What kind of information?" I placed the flash drive on her desk. "I'll let you see for yourself." That night, Ethan received a sudden call from senior management. The next morning, rumors started swirling. By noon, he was summoned into a private meeting. By evening, his name had mysteriously vanished from the upcoming event's promotional materials. And by the following morning, the whispers had turned into full-blown office gossip. Something was very wrong with Ethan's promotion. I made sure to keep my expression neutral whenever anyone brought it up. I was just another bystander. Observing. Waiting. Until the big day. The promotion event was held in the company's main conference hall. A sleek, professional setup. Rows of chairs filled with employees, media representatives, and corporate partners. Ethan, despite the storm brewing around him, still showed up. Dressed in his finest suit, he walked onto the stage with a forced smile, standing beside the company's CEO as the official announcement was about to be made. I waited for the perfect moment. Right when the CEO was about to introduce Ethan's new position, the large projector screen behind them suddenly flickered. Then the first image appeared. A screenshot of Ethan's messages to Sophia. Gasps filled the room. The CEO turned, confused. Ethan stiffened. Then the next image popped up. A hotel check-in receipt under the name Daniel Hayes. More whispers. Then the final blow. A video. It played loud and clear. Ethan's voice filled the room. "Claire has no clue. She's too busy with charity events and yoga retreats. If she knew half the things I did." Silence. Then a sharp gasp from the front row. "Claire. She stood up, her face pale with shock and rage. Ethan turned, reaching out. Claire, slap. The sound echoed across the hall. The audience erupted into murmurs, some even recording the scene on their phones. The CO stepped forward, his face red with anger. Ethan, what the hell is this? Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Security arrived. Within minutes, he was escorted out of the building. His career was over. His marriage was over. Everything he had built, his reputation, his influence, his power, was gone. And as I watched him disappear down the hallway, humiliated, defeated, I smiled. Justice was served. The moment Ethan was dragged out of the conference hall, chaos erupted. Executives whispered furiously among themselves. Employees exchanged shocked glances. Some still had their phones up, recording the aftermath of the scandal that had just unfolded in front of everyone. Claire stood frozen, her hand still trembling from the slap she had delivered to her husband. Her eyes, filled with betrayal and humiliation, darted around the room, scanning the crowd as if trying to find the person responsible for exposing Ethan. But I kept my expression carefully neutral. I wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning of his downfall. Because Ethan had skeletons in his closet that even he didn't know I knew about. And now I was about to set off a bomb that would completely obliterate his life. The thing about men like Ethan is that they always think they're the smartest person in the room. He had covered his tracks well enough that Claire had been blind to his infidelity for years. He had maintained a powerful image at work, fooling the higher-ups into believing he was their best candidate for leadership. But Ethan wasn't just a cheater. He was a fraud. And I had the proof. You see, while I was gathering evidence of his affair, I dug a little deeper into his financial records, just to see if there was anything else worth knowing. And what I found? A tangled mess of embezzlement. Ethan had been funneling company funds into a personal account for years, covering his tracks with fake invoices, non-existent vendors, and manipulated expense reports. A few $1,000s here, a few thousand there. Just small enough amounts to go unnoticed. But over time, he had stolen nearly $500,000. And now the company was about to find out. 2 hours after the disastrous conference, I received a text from a private number. I know you did this. Meet me. Now. It didn't take a genius to figure out who it was. Claire. She wanted answers. Good. Because I had plenty to give her. We met at a quiet cafe on the other side of town. Claire was already there when I arrived, a pair of dark sunglasses hiding her swollen, tear-streaked eyes. I slid into the chair across from her, waiting for her to speak first. She didn't waste time. Was it you? Her voice was steady but barely. Did you send me those emails? I met her gaze. Yes. She exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table like she needed to steady herself. Why? I could have given her the long answer. I could have told her about the humiliation I suffered under Ethan, how he had mocked me in front of my colleagues, belittled my work, made me feel worthless. But instead I gave her the truth that mattered most. Because you deserved to know. Claire let out a bitter laugh. And here I was defending him all these years. Standing by his side, believing every word he told me. I didn't reply. Because there was more. And I was about to give her the final push she needed to destroy him. I slid a folder across the table. Open it. She hesitated, then slowly pulled out the documents inside. Bank statements. Transaction logs. Fake invoices. Proof that Ethan wasn't just a liar and a cheater. He was a criminal. As she flipped through the pages, her face turned pale. Her fingers trembled. Finally, she looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. He stole $500,000? Yes. Her jaw clenched. Then, without another word, she closed the folder, stood up and walked away. And I knew without a doubt that Ethan's real nightmare was about to begin. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee at my desk, I heard the commotion. Ethan had come back to the office. Except this time he wasn't alone. 2 men in black suits followed behind him. Federal investigators. Claire had wasted no time. She had taken the evidence straight to the authorities. And now Ethan was being escorted out of the building in handcuffs. His career, over. His marriage, destroyed. His freedom, at serious risk. As he passed by my desk, his eyes locked onto mine. For the first time since I had known him, there was no arrogance, no smugness. Just realization. Realization that he had underestimated me. And as he was dragged out the front doors, with the entire office watching in stunned silence, I finally let myself smile. Because justice wasn't just served. It was personal. 1 month later, the dust had settled, but the damage Ethan had inflicted, on his marriage, his career, and his future, was irreversible. The company wasted no time scrubbing his name from every corner of the organization. His almost promotion had become nothing more than an embarrassing footnote in corporate history. Employees whispered about him in the break room, but only in passing. New scandals always came, replacing old ones. But Ethan's disgrace wasn't just an office rumor. It was everywhere. Within days of his arrest, local business blogs ran headlines like, "Rising corporate star falls from grace. Arrested for fraud and infidelity." From the boardroom to the courtroom, the downfall of Ethan Carter. Every article detailed his double betrayal. How he had not only cheated on his wife but also stolen from the very company that had trusted him. It was poetic, really. His own arrogance had convinced him he was untouchable. But in the end, the world didn't tolerate men like him. And neither did I. His trial was fast-tracked, thanks to Claire's cooperation and the bulletproof evidence I had gathered. With so much proof stacked against him, Ethan had no real defense. His lawyer tried to spin a narrative about stress, how he had been overwhelmed by the pressures of his job. No one bought it. The judge handed down the sentence: 5 years in federal prison. White-collar crime wasn't always punished harshly, but Ethan had been stupid enough to make enemies in very powerful places. His former bosses, once eager to promote him, turned their backs without hesitation. His affair with Sophia had cost the company its reputation. His embezzlement had threatened their financial standing. They wanted him gone. And just like that, the man who had once humiliated me in front of the entire office was now reduced to a prisoner in an orange jumpsuit, eating stale bread and counting the days until his release. Justice? No. This was karma. Claire didn't waste time picking up the pieces of her life. A week after Ethan's arrest, she filed for divorce. Unlike most wives in her situation, she wasn't left penniless, because she had a very smart lawyer. The prenup had a fidelity clause, and since Ethan had broken it in the worst way possible, Claire was entitled to a significant portion of his remaining assets, including the house, including their joint investments, including his bank accounts. By the time the dust settled, Claire walked away with everything. Ethan, on the other hand, had nothing. I ran into her once, a month later, at an upscale restaurant downtown. She looked different, lighter, happier, reborn. She spotted me, paused for a moment, then smiled. And for the first time I saw it. Gratitude. He knew. Maybe she had figured it out that night at the cafe. Maybe she had put the pieces together over time. Either way, she never said a word. She simply nodded in my direction before returning to her table, sipping her wine like a woman who had finally won her life back. And honestly, he deserved it. As for me, I thrived. With Ethan out of the picture, the workplace changed overnight. The toxic environment he had cultivated, the constant belittling, the favoritism, the fear of crossing him, disappeared. People started speaking up. The executives, desperate to repair their reputation after the scandal, initiated a complete culture shift. They needed to show they were different. And who better to lead that shift than the very people Ethan had once underestimated? I didn't just keep my job, I got promoted. Not to a VP position, but close. A leadership role. More power. More respect. And the best part? People actually valued my work now. I was no longer that employee Ethan mocked in front of everyone. I was the one who survived him, who outlasted him, who destroyed him. And I slept better at night knowing that. Some people say revenge is a waste of energy, that it poisons the soul. I disagree, because for me, revenge wasn't just about hurting Ethan. It was about restoring balance, making things right. Men like him go through life thinking they can do whatever they want. Lie, cheat, steal, and walk away untouched. But the truth? No one is untouchable. And sometimes karma just needs a little push. I was that push. And I'd do it all over again. Ethan's new reality was a far cry from the life he once flaunted. Gone were the designer suits, the expensive whiskey, and the luxury business trips. Now he was just another inmate in a federal prison, reduced to an identification number and a set of orange scrubs. His cell was small, cold, and unforgiving, just like the world that had abandoned him. No more adoring employees hanging on to his every word. No more power plays or corporate games. He was now at the mercy of the very system he had once believed himself too smart to be caught by. From what I heard through whispers in the office grapevine, prison wasn't treating him well. Some inmates were former businessmen like him, locked away for tax fraud and financial crimes. But others were hardened criminals who had no patience for arrogant white-collar guys who thought they were better than everyone else. I imagine the first few weeks had been a brutal wake-up call for Ethan. The last update I got was that he had been denied early parole. The judge saw through his remorseful act and refused to let him walk free. He still had nearly 5 years left to serve. By the time he got out, the world would have moved on. No career. No connections. No family waiting for him. Just nothing. A fitting end for a man who once thought he was invincible. Claire flourished in ways I don't think even she saw coming. With Ethan out of the picture, she threw herself into a fresh start. She sold their marital home, packed up her belongings and left the city behind. I later heard she had moved to Europe for a while. Something about a vineyard in France. She had always loved wine and now she had the freedom and financial security to enjoy it. A few months later, her social media was filled with pictures of her traveling, smiling, living. And the best part? She had cut all ties with Ethan. No letters. No visits. No last-minute pleas for forgiveness. She had erased him completely. And that was the greatest revenge of all. After Ethan's downfall, the workplace transformed. At first, there was an awkward adjustment period. The executives scrambled to repair the company's image, implementing new ethics training, stricter financial audits, and policies against workplace favoritism. But over time, the office thrived. People who had once been overlooked, including myself, were now given opportunities to lead. The toxic hierarchy Ethan had built crumbled, replaced with something better. Me. I was finally seen. The promotion I received wasn't just a title. It was validation. Recognition of the hard work that Ethan had once dismissed. I had a seat at the table now. And unlike Ethan, I had earned it. One evening, months after everything had settled, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. The return address? A federal prison. I didn't have to open it to know who it was from. Ethan. Curious, I unfolded the paper and skimmed the words written in his familiar, messy scrawl. You think you won, don't you? You ruined my life, destroyed everything I built. But I will come back from this. Always do. Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. I promise this isn't over. I read the letter twice. Then I laughed. Because the truth was, it was over. Ethan just hadn't accepted it yet. I ripped the letter in half and tossed it in the trash. Let him sit in his cell, clinging to the illusion that he could rise again. Meanwhile, I would keep moving forward. Living. Thriving. Winning. Because that's the difference between people like him and people like me. He destroyed himself through arrogance and greed. And I rebuilt myself through justice. The battle was over. And I had won. For good.